Okay, good morning, everyone. Good morning. So my name is Jackie Acho LeMay. I am so happy to be here having this conversation this morning. And for those of you who came back on that snowy day, and if you're back today, thank you so much for joining us again. So we have some wonderful people here today that I have had the pleasure of knowing and working with for some time now. And I'm going to let them introduce themselves, but I'm going to give you just a brief outline. 4 years ago, Detective Chris Gibbons called me. He had seen a TEDx talk I gave called A Good Day's Work Requires Empathy. And he called and he said, yeah, I'm Detective Gibbons with Employee Assistance at the Cleveland Police Department, and I think we may have a problem with empathy. Can you help us? And I nearly dropped the phone. And I said, well, I don't know. Let's have lunch. And we began a conversation. And the conversation turned into more conversations. And it opened up to include more people, the chief of police. And then not too long afterwards, Commander Brandon Kutz, who's at the end here, who is in charge of the police, the Cleveland Police within the 4th District. The 4th District is near and dear to our hearts at St. Paul's because that includes Edwin's, with whom we have a partnership. It is south and southeast and southwest of Shaker Square. It is one of the most violent, statistically, districts in Cleveland, which makes it one of the most violent, statistically, districts in the country. So it's a tough job. Pretty soon after that, I met Community Engagement Officer Carmen Hall, who is part of the innovation team that got set up within the 4th District to make some improvements in the lives of officers and in the relationship with the community. And we've been doing that work for just about 1.5 years now, I think. And Carmen took on this new role called Community Engagement Officer during the course of our work. And you'll learn more from her about what that means, but it's a wonderful position, and they do wonderful work. And then the last person to join our little band here is Ms. Marilyn Burns. Marilyn is a community leader and advocate, and she's done more things than we'll be able to talk about this morning. She could do a whole weekend retreat on all that she does, but she is a resident of the 4th District and has been working tirelessly on behalf of those residents and especially the children of that community. And we are in the course now of bringing the community and the police together to have conversations about how to improve the relationship. And there's a wonderful, wonderful group of community leaders that's been gathering. And Ms. Marilyn is part of that group. That's how I met her some months ago now. And actually tomorrow is the day that we're going to bring police and community leaders together in a human-centered design workshop to talk about specific improvements they can make. So this has been an ongoing conversation. We're so glad to broaden it now and include all of you. Without any further ado, I'd like for each of you to just, give these folks the highlight of who you are and what you bring personally and professionally to, this whole conversation. We'll start with the commander.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you for inviting all of us here. We do appreciate the opportunity to sit here and tell you a little bit about who we are and what we're doing. Again, my name is Brandon Kutz. I'm the commander of the 4th District. Today is actually my 21st anniversary of being hired to the Cleveland. 21 very fast years. So I am not a native Clevelander. I grew up in rural Medina County, the son of 2 teachers. I have a Bachelor of Arts in History with a minor in Archaeology, and no surprise, you can't make money doing either one of those things. So I got kind of convinced to start taking some of these tests. A police department buddy of mine asked if I wanted to take the test, and I said, sure. So we came up and took the test. I got hired, and he didn't. But it was a very lucky set of circumstances that led me to the police department. It's been a perfect fit. I've been an East Side police officer pretty much my whole career. Pretty much an outsider coming into a new place, meeting new people, new cultures. It couldn't be more different than the place where I grew up. And it's been very rewarding. Every day is a new day to learn something new, challenges to overcome pretty much every single day. And it's been a very rewarding 21 years. So I made my way up the ranks, and at one point I was put in charge of training, probably about, I think it was 2012. It's after Chief Williams had been made chief. And we started putting into place things that would change the department, even from when I was a lieutenant in the training section. And from there, I made captain, and then they asked the mayor and the chief hired me to run the 4th District as the commander there. And it's been an amazing experience. Police officers and detectives inside that building have been amazing. Lots of skills, lots of heart, lots of talent, and the community has been equally amazing. I'll say this real quick, that the mayor said, you know, when you go out to the 4th District, Brandon, you're going to find that the community out there is very engaged. They're very demanding, but they care a lot. I thought, well, okay, we'll see. You know, I'd never been in the 4th District. I've always been in other ones, but never the 4th District. And I spent the first 3-4 months really learning the community, getting out and going to every meeting I could, meeting thousands of people, and I couldn't believe the response that I got. So supportive. And I went to a Christmas party, and my deputy chief walks up to me and says, Brandon, how's it going in the 4th District? And I said, it's going pretty well, Chief. You know, one of the things that amazes me is the community. I said, I can't believe how supportive they've been of me. The 4th District is huge. We have about 90,000 residents, very violent, 90% African American, low income, high crime, a very challenging place to be. And I'm very much probably look like an outsider coming in. And there was I had some concerns about that, and boy, I couldn't have been more wrong. People, every meeting I went to was, you know, we appreciate you, we love that you're here, we want you here, we want your men and women on our street, and we want to know how we can help you do your job better. Which, you know, and every once in a while you get somebody in the crowd that would stand up and say something negative, and as soon as they would sit down, 10 people would jump up and say, we don't believe that, that's not the relationship we want, that's not who we're going to be, that's not who we want to be with you. So overwhelming support, and I asked the chief, I said, is it community like this all over the city, or is this just the 4th District? And he thought for a second, he said, no, it's all over the city. My response to that is, well, Chief, then we're doing our job wrong. Because it should not have taken me 18 years on the job, making the rank of commander, to learn this about the community that I'm working for. Because I've never had that opportunity to sit in front of people that weren't in crisis and have these kinds of conversations. Not as a patrolman for 10 years, not as a sergeant for 4 years, not down in training as a lieutenant. I never had those opportunities. So it was very eye-opening that we needed to change the way that we were conducting our business so that our officers and our detectives had the opportunity to see the community the way that I got to see them as a commander. So that is a longer, probably version of what I was supposed to say.
No, that's great. That's perfect. And it's a great segue to Carmen. Go ahead.
Hi, everybody. My name is Carmen. I've been a police officer for 18 years. I spent 15 years out on patrol, calls for service, and then I went to a community services unit where we just worked with the community and with quality of life issues, and took care of a lot of the commander's complaints that came directly to him. We would follow up and make sure that the people were satisfied. Right now, I am a community engagement officer, and I spend a lot of time going to meetings and meeting a lot of people. And like the commander said, the community is very engaging, and they are very, they really want to be a part of. So on a daily, day-to-day, I just come in, and my job can be very creative. I can do what I can to engage myself in the community. I reach out to community leaders like Marilyn, who she does a lot for the community. And we just build partnerships, and we're trying to build trust.
All right.
Thanks, Carmen.
Detective Gibbons.
Yeah, my name is Detective Chris Gibbons. I am assigned to the Employee Assistance Unit. I've been on the job for 22 years. I guess I'm the old man up here. So I worked in the 6th District on the northeast side in Glenville, primarily in Glenville. And I love the job. I love being on the street. It was so exciting. I said it was just the most exciting job I could imagine. And my boss, Sergeant Linda Dismuke, kind of made me an offer I couldn't refuse. She wanted me to come down to employee assistance for a reason that's not really important here, but so I did, and my first couple of years I was just so overwhelmed with the trauma that officers had experienced. I just felt like we were a mass unit. Just officers would come with all these problems, all these things that they had seen in real crisis, and I really wanted to be much more proactive. You know, and you see officers making mistakes because they're so human, and that was what was just struck me that we needed help. And so I started trying to be a little more proactive, being an employee assistance. So I started looking around for resources, and I knew that I had lost some of my empathy. I had become a little cynical. I can talk more about that a little bit later if we want. And I had been changed by the job on some levels, some ways for the better, and some ways for the worse. And I wanted to address that in me personally, and then in the department. And I got to accomplish both with one stone, with two birds with one stone. I started meeting the right people, and one of them was Dr. Acho. So I was looking around, and she does empathy work in organizations, and I knew that that was really something we needed. I wanted to be able to change the culture, or help change the culture, and that's how we came together.
It is. All right. Ms. Marilyn.
Well, as they always say the best for last. Good morning, everyone. My name is Marilyn Burns. As Jackie said, I am a community leader, advocate. Also, I'm a Ward Precinct Committee person. Our councilman is Blaine Griffin. As many of you might know, wonderful guy. I'm going to plug in for him. Gotta get brownie points for that. So, my role, I've been in, we talk about low-income areas. Well, I live in one of the biggest one here in Cleveland, and that is, well, it used to be known as Morris Black. They changed the name to Woodhill Homes Estates. I've been there, this is my 13th year, and I've got to say I've seen it all. It's diverse in a lot of ways. There is it is a high crime area, a lot of domestic violence, a lot of drug activity, and I suppose you're all sitting here wondering, well, my God, why is she still there? Because God placed me there. He saw something in me that I had to, that I was able to give back to the community. I enjoyed Jackie's book because I'm very empathetic. I see a lot that goes on a day-to-day basis, and I'm there to help be a part of it, be a sounding board. It's all about the kids there. It's a family estate, so there are hundreds and hundreds of kids there who see a lot of crime and a lot of bad things every day. I try to give back to the community things that they need, resources. Sometimes a lot of them need just somebody to talk to vent to. A lot of them need prayer. A lot of their children are just lost. They're angry about several different issues. So I try to give back to the community. I try to put myself in a position where, how would I feel? And I have a testimony as well because I have been hurt through my journey in this life as well. So I can kind of be on a one-to-one with a lot of people that I meet every day. I know what they're going through. I see their struggles, and I'm there to help remove any barriers that I can to help make their quality of life much better. This is what I'm here to do. I'm here to serve. This is what he came to do, to serve. I don't put myself above anybody because that same shoe could be on my foot at any given time. So this is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thanks, everybody. So, you know, when I started working with the police, I'll admit to you that my perception of the police is kind of negative. I mean, number one, I'd only ever dealt with a police officer when I was being pulled over for speeding, not that often. You know, or, of course, you know, I've seen the stories in the news, right? And the stories in the news are discouraging and scary. And so when I first started working, I was a little bit of afraid. And I mean, I have to tell you, and I hope you'll get a flavor as you get to know these folks, there are really wonderful people working in the police, and they really are about service. And in 25 years of consulting with a huge variety of organizations, Fortune 500 companies, Cleveland Police is, I think, probably my all-time favorite client at this point. They're very entrepreneurial. You know, police officers show up at a scene and they can't say, well, I don't know what to do. They have to do something. They have to solve problems. They have to work with people. They have to come right up against people. One of the things we like to say is empathy is a contact sport. And one of the ways that I made contact early on, because Detective Gibbons encouraged me to do it, is I did a ride-along in the 4th District with the police, which any citizen can do, by the way. You're welcome to do it. And it makes me think of Jesse's sermon today, because I felt such a sense of standing in the place that I don't get to stand that often. And meeting people I don't get to meet that often. And seeing the humanity that these police officers were bringing, and the humanity they were getting from their interactions with the citizens. So I wanted to give these folks a little bit of a flavor of that without going on a ride-along this morning, by asking you to think through a day in your life and share with them, what did a day look like last week, 2 weeks ago? Just pick your favorite day. Anybody can go first.
I'll go first. My day. What does my day look like? Definitely, I have to say, I have to start it off with prayer. I have to be armored up because I don't know what I'm going to deal with on a day-to-day basis. Average day looks like first thing in the morning, I'm hearing arguments, whether it be domestic violence, whether it be the kids in a fight, or so forth. I step out of the door, and I might see a violent act. I might see kids that should be in school that aren't in school. I see parents not even concerned about why their kid isn't in school. The approach has to be different with everyone when I approach and question this. You know, by me not having any small children in school, it's kind of hard to say when a school is going on or if certain kids out of school on a particular day. But it's very concerning about me simply because our kids in school aren't getting the quality education where I live that they deserve. They're missing out on so much. So when they're not in school, that's a big concern to me. Why isn't he in school? Why aren't they there? Why aren't you in the house with your kid helping them read a book? So I'm always interactive. We have a $15.3 million community center where I live. I want to know why there aren't as many activities as there should be there. There should be something going on every day. I want to know why. Everything. Why isn't this happening? Why isn't that happening? Well, in the area that I live, I found out when I became a researcher at Case Western Reserve that our area that I live in has been redlined. I don't know how many of you are familiar with redlining, but it's specifically set up to fail. From 1920-30 to 2019 now, not too much has changed. We know that redlining is illegal. They just put a different name and a different face on it, but it is still going on.
And tell people who may not be familiar with redlining what it is.
Okay, redlining is areas in residential areas that are set off, it's like a real estate thing. You know, what's not going to be as popular to live as, say, maybe if you lived in Lyndhurst, okay? So, with that being said, we were sectioned off. And that sectioning off, a lot of CMHA, if you're not familiar with CMHA, that's Cuyahoga County Metropolitan Housing. And with a lot of the redline areas is surrounded, but through Cuyahoga County Metropolitan Housing. And where I live is CMHA. So there is violence, it's like we're fenced off, so to speak. We live a certain way. People don't they feel the hopelessness and feel like this is the way that they're supposed to live, but this is where I come into the picture. There is hope in hopelessness. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I try to bring that light to the community, to give them resources, to give them hope, to give them encouragement, to take off these blinders, to tell you that you don't have to live this way. There is a better life for you. There are better conditions. But to achieve those better conditions, we have to come together as a community to want this. But when the mindset has been there's been so much disparity surrounding this, it makes my job even harder. So this is an ongoing fight for me. And I could go on and preach to the choir about this forever and a day. I'm going to collaborate one day with Jackie to write a book about this, but I'm going to pass this time.
Yeah, please, Carmen or Brandon, yeah.
I'm just going to jump in about the redlining. So that was back in 1934, FHA loans. They wouldn't make loans to people in certain areas where African Americans lived. So that stagnated any development. Ever since then, our neighborhoods have just gone down. So that is just a piece of history and why things are, or a part of why things are the way they are. Now, as far as my day in the police department, I start working at 4 o'clock every day. We have 3 CEOs. 2 of them work in the day, and I start at night or in the evening. And I usually attend meetings, community meetings, block club meetings, some events, but most of the events are held in the daytime. And again, I just get to meet a bunch of wonderful people, listen to their concerns. I listen to what they're doing in the community, which is fascinating, the things that people are doing in our community. So, and then I'm able to partnership with them. They invite us. We go and we engage with them. We don't, the strategy is not a crisis type of situation. It's just to get to know people in the community, have conversations, and see where we can change the narrative.
Brandon?
So I remember on Johnny Carson, they used to have a guy come on and he'd spin about 10 plates at one time. Just spin around the station. As the commander of the 4th District, I'm a plate spinner. Really, I served 3 masters. I certainly served the mayor and the administration of the city of Cleveland to make sure that the mission of the 4th District carries forward appropriately. I certainly serve the community that I work for, meaning that I make myself as available as humanly possible and my people as available as humanly possible so that we have open lines of communication and that we're working to resolve problems. And then finally, and not least of all, is I serve the men and women that work for me. Police work is a hard job. People get burned out. People get angry. They get salty. And there's a lot of trauma and damage that police officers suffer throughout their career. And if we are not intentional about addressing that and making sure that our officers are given every opportunity to be healthy and succeed, then I feel that our organization is failing. And we haven't really done a good job historically of addressing those issues. The Cleveland Division of Police, and I'm sure probably a lot of police departments around the United States are probably in the same kind of position. Part of that is building my men and women up, making sure that they remember why they took this job, because I think at the heart of every policeman is the strong core of service and wanting to make their world a better place, and that does get crusty over time. So it's our job to knock that crust off, try to find ways to keep that heart healthy, so that when they go out, and our expectations are when they go in the community that they treat the community with respect, and that they listen and they help solve problems. So before we expect them to do that in the community, we should be doing that with them. So part of my job, big part of my job, is figuring out ways to give that same voice to my patrolmen that I want my patrolmen giving the community. Because it has to start at home first. Chris, I think we're very much on the same page with, there's a lot of trauma to be healed. So it's a very rewarding job. My job is very stressful and overwhelming at times. Those are a lot of big plates to be spinning. Because at the end of the day, too, we have to make the community feel safe. And, it's not an easy job to do in the 4th District. We have big problems and small resources to deal with it. So we try to be efficient and maximize and have big impact for what we can do. So that's my whole day, is trying to figure out how to do that and make decisions and guide my people and go home exhausted and have nothing left for my wife at the end of the night mentally, which she really appreciates.
Thank you. Chris, I hope you pick a yoga day.
Yeah, the choir just strike out when the commander.
That happens all the time. I thought that was just in my head.
So should I give a little historical background, or should I talk about my day today, currently, like what I would do?
Do what you want to do.
Okay, well, so I'll just say this. So the commander, last time the commander addressed was trauma with police officers. And so, I think it's kind of ironic. I was thinking about St. Paul sitting in here, and I believe that God uses weakness, our human weakness, to his advantage. And St. Paul's weakness was notorious, legendary, and biblical. And, I come from Roman tradition, so I'm kind of a St. Peter guy, but his weakness was pretty notorious, too. But I think, I kind of had that moment for myself, really. So when I was raised, my father was a police officer. He worked in the 6th District. My grandfather, his dad, worked in the 6th District. My mom's dad worked in the 6th, and he was appointed to traffic commissioner by Elliot Ness, actually. And my cousin went through the academy with me. My uncle was in the 1st District. I could go on and on. But I was never raised with prejudice or ill will towards anybody. My dad's a loving, compassionate guy. My mother's the same way. Raised in the church and always had really good will towards everybody. But then I started working in the county jail and city jail, and I started being exposed to all this trauma, and exposed to all this stuff, and I became more cynical. Some feelings I didn't like about myself started to come up. I started to become a little, I'll be honest, I became a little prejudiced. It really started to happen in my life. And I hated that about myself. I really did not, because I knew intellectually, I'm working with these incredible African-American people. I see the compassion, I see the intelligence, I see the love, and yet here, the fear in me is bringing up these feelings, right? I'm starting to be compromised. And I see this happening to me personally, and I started praying about it, asking for an interventionist, and God, please help me. And that moment happened for me. And I had a lot of police officers were the ones who would say, hey, Chris, there's a better way to do it. It was police officers who were the ones who intervened. And when they said it, I had to pay attention. I couldn't ignore what they were saying. And finally, one woman who I had a crush on, right? And the power of a woman that you have a crush on, right? She checked me on it. I made a stupid remark one day, and she checked me on it, and it was like someone had put a mirror up to me. And I saw myself for who I was at that moment, something I despised, something I hated. I didn't like what happened to me. And from that moment to this, I've never felt the same way. Right? There was about 8 years of prayer that was finally answered on that day. So what I started to realize, then I started to become curious. I said, well, I know that this is the historical background I was just given here, and there's a lot more to it. We could have another symposium on that entirely. I started researching and said, well, why? When I worked in the 6th District, Glenville, at that time, we had to do this distinction of being the most violent district. And now the 4th has it. At that time, I said, well, why? Why is the problem? Why the struggle in this community? And I started to really, really research and look into it, and I could go on and on. There's plenty of reasons. Not one of them is because there's an inferiority. Not one of them has anything to do with that. So when I was brought down to employee assistance, I knew that officers were struggling with the same things that I did. And it was something that people were very uncomfortable talking about. No one wanted to talk about it. It's still uncomfortable to talk about it. But I knew it was something that had to be addressed. And even if it didn't take that form, maybe just a cynicism about humanity in general. Like, that just happens, too long of suffering with the stone of the heart. That's not mine, that's Keats said that. But that's what happens. You see this constantly. And what I started to realize was that the community in these difficult, struggling neighborhoods and police officers share so much in common that if I could only let them see that, if we could only let them see how much they have in common. So the community has fear that they're going to die from gunfire or some violent incident. Well, guess what? So the police were quick. They have the exact same fear. They have the same, we're going to be exposed to violence, and they're exposed to violence. So I want us to see the common humanity, and part of what we're doing here, I believe, is that we expose empathy is a contact sport, and trying to get police officers and community to come together in novel and creative ways to reach the solutions and overcome all the headwinds that a couple of them were mentioned here. There's a lot more to it. Banking interest, compound interest, economy.
And that's a whole other symposium.
That's a whole other subject, right? I'm not going to get into all that, but there's a lot that goes into, what is the problems of the thing. So, be the change you want to see in the world, I think that's what we're trying to do here.
For sure. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. So, to bring people together, to grow this empathy, we started with something kind of simple, really. We asked the officers, what do you need?
Novel concept.
And no one had ever done that. When Chris and I think the commander was there in that meeting too, were sitting with the chief and said, well, I said, well, of course you've done employee engagement surveys. And never, not once. In how many years?
What's 160 years?
60 years?
I have to ask my oldest relative.
So what makes the news, is obviously the bad news. But we wanted to hear from all the good people who are there to serve about, the kinds of things, like the intervention that Chris got from his fellow police officers. Most of them are good and there to serve. And so we wanted to ask them, organizations get in the way, people. The police department is not uncommon. 70% of people say they're disengaged at work. Work is a painful place to be for a lot of people. Organizations get in the way. And when you have an organization where lives are at stake, well, the risks are through the roof and fear goes way up high. So we wanted to be able to bring that down. That's the work that we do. And so we sent out a survey. It's a currency of empathy diagnostic that we have. We didn't call it that. We didn't use the E word first. We called it, I think, the Cleveland Police Survey, Cultural Diagnostic Survey, right? And we got hundreds of comments and lots of participation. And officers saying, this is my badge number, this is my phone number, you call me, I want to be involved. And from there, we built an innovation team that included Carmen and 12 or so, 14 maybe talented others, diverse in their perspectives. And they came up with some ideas, and we started implementing them. And some of them did have to do with taking care of the officers in the building, because empathy is selfish first. You can't give what you don't have. And now we're at the point of reaching out into the community. So let's talk a little bit about, and I'm going to leave room for questions too, so you can think of your questions, but let's talk a little bit about what are the ways that we've done, or that we've seen, or that we have planned coming forward, that we can build empathy between police and community. Anybody?
First of all, when Jackie Acho says it's a simple idea, my hair used to look like hers. Before I met her. Nothing simple about this. What was the question? I was waiting to get that line. I'm not getting away with the simple.
How do we build empathy in the police and between police and community?
I think number one is listening. We spend a lot of time through this whole process listening to first the officers. And then, it was self-aid first. So one of the things we learned is before you can help your buddy, you got to help yourself. So, you got to treat your own injuries first before you can treat your buddy's injuries. So the very first part of it was really listening to the officers and addressing their priorities. So the team came up with priority issues that they identified for themselves, and they got to work on it. And one of the amazing things was we took 12 police officers that probably affected more change than a bunch of people wearing white shirts and a lot of brass on their shoulder had done for decades. And so we empowered these officers to make these changes and to carry on these projects and make presentations in front of the chief and put new policies into place, and just amazing work being done that told the officers that, one, we're listening to you, two, we're going to support the ideas that you have, and then we're going to run with your idea and empower you to do what you feel is best for you and your peers. And it's been a very amazing opportunity to see that. And then the next progression that we had, one of the things we did identify very early on was the officers were concerned about the way that the community perceived them. All the negativity in the media, certainly going from one run to the next where they're meeting people in a very negative state, focusing in on people that maybe say nasty things to them as they drive by in the car and give them a finger or whatever they might do that is negative towards the police. They focus on those things. And they're very concerned about that. And they want they want the community to respect them and to appreciate their service and to understand what it is that they do and that they're doing it because they want to serve. They noticed that is a major part of what they think is wrong with their jobs and their career and the environment that they work in. So we then pushed this innovation team to kind of meet our community team, which we had already built a community team. I meet with the community large scale once a month. And then we also meet once a month with the smaller, we have 8 neighborhoods in the 4th district. In every neighborhood we have a representative and an alternate rep from each neighborhood. And then they meet with me in my office once a month, and we plan and talk about things that they're concerned about and the projects that we can work on. And it is a very logical group to get involved in the process that my police officer team is already doing. And so now we've reached out to the community with Jackie and her group, working with our community and our policemen to do another one of these looks and do, what are important to us, what are important to the community, what's important to the police about the relationship with one another. And now we're moving into, here are the results of what we think are important and what are we going to do about it. And it's going to be the same kind of an experience, which is empowering them to make decisions, supporting the decisions that they make, and letting them work together and find out all the amazing things they can do together to solve problems. And I think the big one, when we're dealing with relationships, that's a huge one to get over. There's all kinds of things we can do once we start working on that. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what the group of community members and the group of police officers working together are going to be able to do in the 4th district. And I think that's going to be transformative for my policemen. I think it's going to be transformative for a lot of our community members. And I'm hoping that that'll spread throughout the division as we start having success stories. And we can make every district in the city of Cleveland healthier and happier and more effective.
And I should say, Brandon and his team have made it look good enough that the 1st district just took it up. So it is starting to spread, which is wonderful. Chris, I want you to be able to tell them about yoga and meditation.
Yeah, so thanks, Jackie. There's another little initiative. So I kind of wanted to do 3 things, I guess, was start addressing cultural changes, which we're doing here, and then some community outreach, which now we're also doing that. And then one other thing was I wanted to give officers, so I mentioned the Roman tradition, Jesuit, actually I went to St. Ignatius High School. And they had a retreat program. And, we really got a lot from this. I mean, I loved it. I loved the retreats, and almost every other kid that I went to school with loved it. And I thought, if young high school kids can enjoy something like that or renew their spirit from that, why couldn't police, right? Why couldn't we? Why wouldn't we be open to that? And so we started kind of hitting some dead ends, trying some different things. And finally we came upon, I met a couple of people, actually my old partner, Stephanie Murphy, she went through some real difficulty in her personal life and found yoga and meditation to be really transformative for her. And she suggested years ago that I should get yoga, in the department and meditation and mindfulness. And so I began to pursue that, and once again, met all the right people. And we started doing that, and what we're doing is we call it a training day, but really it's kind of a retreat, but we have to, being a civic organization, it's non-denominational, it's a secular approach, and we have, we introduce them to mindfulness, mindful eating, yoga, and meditation. And then we have ongoing yoga and meditation that they can drop in on weekly. Really, I think we have about 18 or 19 classes that they can join.
Free.
Yeah.
Free.
For free. For free, yeah.
It's been paid for by foundation.
By foundation, yeah. So, it's great. And that's been, and so then the next phase too is wrapping back into the community. We want to bring the community on board and bring officers and community members together to practice this practice that I found to be really, really helpful. And one thing I wanted to comment on too was the commander got to was that I'll just say my whole life growing up, it was always a safe place. I always felt safe at home, and I thank God for that. And I think of the police department. For years, police officers haven't felt safe in roll call. We felt we've been pulled on all these different directions. There's, like Jackie kind of addressed that there's just a discord in the police department, a lot of stress in roll call. Most of it happens in roll call. We know what to expect on the street. That's the job we signed up for. We knew we wanted to do. But if we can support officers at home, right, have a safe place for them and make them feel safer, then they can take that feeling of safety and security out to the street. How can police officers who don't feel safe and secure go out to the street and transmit that to the community? If they're fearful, then they're going to transmit that to the community, and it's just going to be totally counterproductive. So that's what we're dealing with all of this.
So, yeah, empathy is inside out. Brandon?
Yeah, let me jump in real quick. I failed to mention this, but one of the biggest parts about this is transformation and cultural transformation. So, we're going very much from a warrior standpoint to a guardian standpoint. And I will tell you that when I got on the job 21 years ago, what was told to me when I was in the police academy is you're going out on the streets and you're part of the biggest gang in the city. You are the biggest gang in the city, and don't forget that. And I kind of understood, I kind of understand what they're getting at is, listen, you have all these people to support you, nobody's going to overpower you, all this other stuff. But by saying that, there was really a mentality behind the gang, which is we're going to do what we want because we're the biggest around. And everybody's going to do what we want or else. And, there's an impact in that. Like, for instance, I was amazed when I was a rookie police officer, we'd be driving down the street, coming towards a red light, and the opposite lanes of traffic would have the green. And as we're coming towards the red light in a police car, not lights and sirens, just driving in traffic, all the other traffic would come to a stop on the green light. I'm like, what is this all about? Why are people stopping? They've got a green light, we've got the red. And the training officer would look at me and goes, don't worry about it, kid, go right through the red light. Because the community had learned, if a police officer hits you, even if you're on a green light, guess who's going to be responsible for that? It's not going to be the police. So it was that kind of attitude, but on a larger scale. And when you you approach the public with that mindset, that's a problem. And we're talking about decades of that mindset. And so really, Chief Calvin Williams and a lot of the other command staff, and we understand that we had to move away from that mindset as soon as humanly possible. So we're really retooling the way that we train our people. We've done it for, since at least when I was in charge of the police academy, we retooled that mindset right away so that officers that are being trained did not go out in the field with that mindset on board at all. And so a lot of this work with empathy is moving from that warrior, biggest gang mentality to guardian, working with the community, solving problem mindset. And it's not easy to move a ship the size of the Cleveland Police Department in that direction. It takes a lot of work. We spent decades and decades getting into this, and it's going to take us time and effort to realign the ship, but we're making massive headway.
And I want to acknowledge there's someone on the stage with us, but not with us, is Monica Tomase-Coles, is my consulting partner, and her specialty is cultural transformation, and so it's been beautiful to watch her work with all of you. Any comments, Carmen?
So people, just piggybacking on what he said, people look at us as authority, but we don't want them to fear us. We want to have a conversation with them. So because of the way things were, people are afraid to approach us, have a conversation with us. And those are the kind of things that we're trying to change. It helps with the innovative team, answering the things that they want in the district. They can go out and feel good because somebody internally cares about them and they're listening to what they want, so they can project out that into the community. And we're just looking for a 360 in the future. So, and then our training has changed as well, like Commander Kutz said. So it's a process, but it's working, I think.
I just want to piggyback off of some of the things. I sit on one of the, I meet with the commander as part of the community team as well. And we talk about this all the time. And there are so many misconceptions. The biggest thing that has to be changed is the trust. When trust is lost, it's kind of hard to rebuild that trust or rekindle that trust again between residents of the community and the police department. The police get such a bad rep. The media has a lot to do with how the community perceives police officers, all the bad things. As we said earlier, you never hear about the success stories. Well, bad news sells, I guess, they say. But what about some good things that happen to build that trust? Whenever I see this on a constant basis, the police drive through, doesn't have to be anything going on, just to drive through. Everybody scatters, like they have something to hide. Not of them do have something to hide. Let's just keep it. I'm a realistic person. I'm the person in the room, if the rug is on the floor, I'm picking it up and I'm finding that spot. So, that being said, we have to, we discuss strategies, we brainstorm all the time at the meetings on how we can repair our trust between the community and the police department. If they just ride through, get out the car, walk around, meet people, we're still apprehensive. So it's like baby steps in trying to transform a community trust with the police department. Why are they getting out of the car? What do they want to talk about? Who they talking about? They must be snitching on somebody. All those misconceptions have to be dispelled, but it's gonna take time. The same way it took the time for all this stuff to build up, this negativity, it's gonna take time to peel all those layers back off and build a trust. When I was growing up, that wasn't too long ago. But anyway, our parents used to tell us, find a police officer. Tell them where you live. Give them your phone number. They'll take you home. They're your friend. Now this is like changed around. Don't go near the phone. They got, it's just such an awful feeling to have. But if we get out here and try, I talk about low-hanging fruit. What can we do now to engage the police and the community in an activity where we can start to rebuild some trust? Just little things. We had a wonderful community dinner for the 4th District Police Department.
Complete with a fire projected on the screen. LED flame in the background.
So, yes, and they all had my famous broccoli salad, which was the hit of the
And I think there must have been a lot of green salad left over that I made.
But, things, activities like that. We talked about having maybe residents, maybe inviting the police over for coffee and conversation and activities that we give. Carmen, as a community engagement officer, she comes to events that we give in the community. She came for our Toys for Tots at Woodhill Community Center. Take pictures with the kids, talk to the residents, and peel back some of these misconceptions that they have. Because at the end of the day, that's just the uniform he has on. He's a human being. He feels like we feel. He has the same fears that we have as community residents. That's just a job when he puts on the uniform. But when he takes that off, he's just like you and I. So we have to try to rebuild that trust between us.
You're much nicer than me, Marilyn.
Beautiful. We can see these folks have so much to offer.